Channel 18 is all set, Tom.
Okay, thank you. Before I open the hearing on the Barnstable Conservation Commissions, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Abadili?
Here.
Foster is not here yet. Gilmore, present. Hearn?
Present.
Lee?
Present.
Moran?
Present.
Sampu?
Present.
Administrator Darcy Carley?
Present.
Staff member Kim Cavanaugh?
Present.
We have a quorum and the floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, August the 30th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. on the application of Constitutes Eddie, LLC, Randolph J. and Barbara G. Noel, Richard and Martha Robinson, John and Dawn Solar, Pond Restoration, LLC. The hearing will be held remotely as televised on Channel 18. The plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointments by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 376 Main Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and transmitted by the Information Technology Department of the Town of Barnstable on Channel 18. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmissions, please let Channel 18 or I know.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to announce that Councillor Foster has joined us. So we have a full complement tonight.
Thank you. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you.
Hearing none, this evening's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisement. Please send your checks to Conservation Division at 367 Main Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participation as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed by the Lieutenant Governor on July 16, 2022, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to this hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the hearing will be televised via Channel 18. 2, the real-time public comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom link 825-7940-6410 or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. 3rd, the public can also email their comments to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. For your information, the Conservation Division's office will be moving to School Administration Building on Thursday, September the 1st. Please try to avoid going or calling the office on Thursday, September the 1st. They will be busy. It will be tough to try to answer any call. Tonight, we don't have RDA, and we have 4 NOIs. The first one is Tien and Eddie, LLC, to remove concrete patio and construct a timber deck at 91 Hawks Avenue, Hyannis, as shown on the Assessors Map 323, parcel 010. John?
Good evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting, representing the applicants. I will bring up the plan. Bear with me. This is a parcel of land in Hyannis, just under a half an acre. It's abutting Nantucket Sound / Hyannis Outer Harbor. There's an existing seawall with a vertical, some riprap, and then a vertical concrete wall, which would be the landward limit of a coastal bank. We have an existing dwelling that was built in the 50s. On the east side of that dwelling is an existing concrete patio area. And the project as proposed is to remove that concrete patio area and construct a timber deck along the house. The proposed deck will be further from the seawall than the existing conditions. It will be less square footage than the concrete patio area, and that area of concrete seaward of the deck will be replanted as shown on the plan. So we think that this is a pretty good and straightforward project, reducing hardscape, switching from concrete impervious to an elevated deck. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thanks, John. Question from the commissioner. No one? This is a good project because you are kind of reducing the hardscape between the 0 to 50 and the 50 to 100, and it's easy. It's a good project. Thank you for doing that. Any public comment? Channel 18.
Seeing none.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Janice.
Hi, I wondered what the elevation of the deck will be.
Let me bring that plan back up for you. So off of the back right corner of the house today is an existing like concrete covered patio area. So the corner of the deck that's in that will stay at that elevation, which is like three steps up, 20 something inches. And then we step back down, and the remainder of it will really just be kind of one step off the ground as we head towards the west.
Okay, thank you.
Janice, could I just get your last name and your address?
My last name is Frizzoli, and I'm at 74 Halls Avenue, directly across the street.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Channel 18.
Seeing none.
None. Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted?
So moved.
Roll call.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster,
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That is unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Good
Thank
luck,
you.
John. The second NOI of the evening is Randolph J. and Barbara G. Noel to reconfigure and reconstruct the existing Stones Terrace patio at 35 Short Beach Road, Centerville, as shown on the Assessors Maps 206, parcel 030. John?
Good evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting again, representing the applicants. I'll bring up the plan. This property is on Short Beach Road. Again, it's just around a half an acre of land. Kind of unique in that this property actually fronts both sides of the Centerville River. The road kind of along Short Beach cuts through the middle of the property. We have an existing dwelling that was rebuilt around 2017 up here to the north. That was a little bit more recent. We have areas of salt marsh on both sides of it. Our project is really focused on the south side. We're out of the buffer zones of the salt marsh to the north. But in the rear of the dwelling, we have a blow up over here. And if you went there, there's some existing terrace areas getting down from the house elevation to the yard. And so this project is really just kind of reconfiguring those. We are working between the 50 and 100 foot buffers. There's a slight increase in the hardscape. And so for that, we are providing mitigation in the 0 to 50. We are resulting in fully restoring the 50-foot buffer. In discussions with staff, there was a comment about the proximity of one of these little terrace walls. So these terraces leading up to the patio area, instead of constructing one sort of solid wall, they're working their way up. Each of these is probably about 16, 18-inch high steps up. So it's not an extensive amount of work there, but by that corner, staff suggested that there's been some past projects where the commission requested that corner be staked or pinned in the hole, and that's certainly something that we would be amenable to. The work is the entire spit of land is located within the flood zone. We're not located in an area that would be subject to any waves. Even if we were, I don't see how reconfiguring this terrace area would result in any impacts on abutting properties, but we did look into that. And so with that, I think I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Question from the commissioner. No one?
Tom.
John.
Darcy, when I talked to Darcy, there was a question about, Darcy, and you may want to raise it relative to the ability to put those plants in around that tree. Darcy, you may want to ask that question. I thought it was correct.
Oh, yes. So when I was first looking at it, I was a little concerned about trying to squeeze that amount of plants between, I think it's some type of evergreen, and the fence line. And then when I was talking to Chuck, he was explaining that, you know, that you're trying to restore the 50-foot buffer. You know, you might not be able to get all those plants in, but with it, you know, you're putting this right up against the 50-foot, and I'm a little concerned about just using the 9-inch cobbles to be the demarcation. I'm really concerned about them trying to walk between the mitigation and the corner point on that stone terrace. I would feel more comfortable with it being a split rail fence or something, because I just have a feeling that that mitigation and the restoration of the 50-foot isn't going to stay right at the edge of that stone terrace.
Any comment from John?
John. Yeah, there is a split rail already kind of along the property edge. We understand the concern. We talked to the landscape team. You know, it's maybe not the preferred solution, but if the commission were to require, you know, would rather not relocate the split rail that's along the property line, but if we needed to have some the split rail instead of the stones, I guess we can understand that.
I don't think Darcy is talking about relocating the split rail fence. I think this would be a new split rail fence to replace the stone demarcations.
Yeah, even if it's like a single rail. Yeah. I'm just concerned that it's going to be human nature to want to go between the corner of that stone wall or stone garden area and that mitigation area. And so I prefer to have a single rail fence or a split rail fence, but I'm not sure how that's going to work on a curb. So I don't know whether you need to kind of rearrange, you know, bringing it on the whole thing on the other side of the tree, so you have more of a straight line, or what. But that's just my recommendations.
So I guess my response to that would be: are you envisioning needing to do a split rail across the entire 30, 40 feet of this, or are you talking about kind of 3 sections, 1 near this corner, 2, 3 spread across it, in which case I don't see why there would be any concern to fit those up.
That's fine, as long as I understand that you really only need to restore the 50-foot. So I wouldn't say you had to go all the way across. You're talking about all the way across the whole bottom of the property? Like,
yeah, so a couple of 3 sections, low split rail would probably provide you with the comfort level.
I'd feel better about that.
Yep. Larry?
My concern, Darcy, I was trying to understand what you were saying. Let me try to rephrase it as I understand it. Looking at this corner down here, it's a sort of an angular corner here where that's going to go. I understand you're concerned that people may come down off of this patio area down to that location, and that they might inadvertently or whatever, walk into the area that's been vegetated. Is that the essence of your concern?
Well, that and for maintenance, because you're going to have lawn on that side, and then there's still some lawn over on the other side. And are they going to be trying to just bring, to maintain and mow, go across that corner?
If the vegetation was right along this line, so you didn't have this little point, then perhaps the lawn maintenance wouldn't be as much of a concern. Is that, John O'Day, is that something you think could be done easily and just eliminate further barriers, just bring the vegetation up in here and just let the lawn cutting occur where it's easier to get to? Would that be a way of dealing with it?
It's an idea that we can bring, to the landscape team and the architects of what their sort of vision is of this little 3 or 4 foot stretch outside the 50-foot buffer. Whether they're planning on just planting it and it not being a traveled way around the house anymore, or if it is, if they are still planning on maintaining lawn, they might want to consider, having less of a corner here so that they can get around. But I think
I understand
we can present
it better.
those to the applicant. From what we've heard so far, I think that would just sort of be a owner's option, but the end result is you have a fence at the 50-foot buffer and you're not mowing through it.
Right.
Okay,
right.
I understand it better now. Thank you.
Louise?
Yeah, I think John O'Day just mentioned the option that they might consider, and that is softening that point on the terraced area. I think that's what you were saying, right, John? So it's not abutting right up to the 50-foot buffer. You still would want to have some sort of a fence barrier there, but it might make
sense not to have the terraced area come out quite so far. And it just depends on how they plan on. They may have absolutely they may just be planning on planting this little area where the hay bales are along the property line anyway, of it being a nothing area, in which case that's not a problem. Right. But we'll just sort of make sure they understand that if they are envisioning access fully around, that they may want to look at that corner before.
Yeah, I think usually we recommend that there be, 3 feet, 5 feet between the edge of a 50-foot and a building just for access, but theoretically, I don't think it's a requirement. So yes, thank you, John.
Any other question from the commissioner?
Excuse me, Tom.
Darcy?
Yeah, and I would just recommend putting less 2 gallons and adding 3 gallons in, because you have them all 2 gallons. So if you can switch that out, I don't mind being less plants, larger sizes.
So they might change the quantity of the planting.
Yeah. I just don't know how well the low bush blueberry, where you have them right under that tree, how they were going to do. So I'd rather have larger plants in the area of the 13 bayberry than.
Okay. John, what is the elevation on the brown gray there?
I looked at that earlier. So this is about an elevation 6 contour that's coming here. So between this and here, we're going up 4 feet, and there's 1, 2, 3 of these steps, kind of stepping walls. That's where I came up with that, 16, 18 inch, per step.
Okay. 10/18, any public comment on this one?
Seeing none.
None? Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to the following? 1 is the receipt of a revised plan showing the changes on the landscape, the quantity of the landscape planting and the location of it. And secondly is the split rail fence, either 2 or 3 sections, depending how you isolate the 50-foot buffer. And thirdly, if there is any change to that corner, you can use this chance to updating that plan to reflect that. I think that's all I have.
And I just want, I'm sorry, can we just clarify? The split rail can be a single rail.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Lee,
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck,
Thank you
John.
very much.
The third NOI is Richard and Martha Robinsons to construct a 20 by 24 barn at 1080 River Road, Marstonville, as shown in the Assessors Map 030, parcel 050. Dan.
Good afternoon, evening, members of the commission. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport. And the owner is on the line if you have any questions of him. We're helping Rick Robinson out with a pretty modest proposal here. If you've been out to the site or even looked at the plans, you'll notice it's a very pleasant little hobby farm, beautiful old Cape style a farmhouse. It was formerly a farm way back in the day, and it's been preserved. He's farming, a couple acres. He's got some goats, and they're running around in the pasture up here. There's a beautiful old mature vegetable garden down against an overgrown bog. The reason we're before you is that it isn't an official working farm. He's been a member of the Farm Bureau and very pro-farm, but he's never bothered to, formally call this a farm. So instead of just being agricultural exempt, it's more of a residential style. So we do fall under the jurisdiction, and we're proposing some mitigation. The flattest section of the site and the only logical place for the barn is in this area here. There's about a 2.5 foot grade change over that. We're just going to build up the back wall, and it's a beautiful post and beam structure that's going to go in there. It's a fairly modest size for a barn. I think it's 20 by 24. So when you multiply out the 480 square foot between the 50 and the 100 by 3, you get about 40 square foot of required mitigation. And again, he's been here since the early 70s and has farmed always to the edge of the bog. It's this very slight bordering vegetated wetlands. So we're pulling back the lawn and putting in Carolina rose, a bunch of high bush blueberries, and then some Carolina rose or sweet fern up in this area. And that's at a 3-to-1 ratio per the convention. So you're looking at 1440 square foot of mitigation. So on a beautiful little farm lot that, again, it's an overgrown bog. So there's plenty of uptake. The plant life in here is very robust, and the pond surface is well buffered from it. So I feel that this is a very reasonable request. And we went through the narrative, the existing conditions, the proposed work, how we meet the local and state regulations, effects on historic interests, and so forth. That covers, I think, all the bases. Again, it's a pretty modest project. Very nice to see on the Cape still an old-fashioned farm working away, and there'll be a nice little addition to it, farm barn in the center of the site. And we're going to put a roof dry well in there for any runoff. And I think a good project. You guys get some lawn taken up that's closest to the resource area, and he gets a little barn for a few more animals. So be glad to answer any questions if you do have them. Thank you.
Before I open up, I want to give Darcy a chance. Darcy went out to the site this morning. So,
yesterday. Yep.
Oh, yesterday. So she has something to report on the site. So it's information that we need to hear. Darcy.
Thank you. Yes, so I did talk to Mr. Robinson, and we went over a few things. He had sent some recommendations, after thinking about it, in the location where you have the proposed high bush blueberries. He would like to keep that section open along the edge of the vegetable garden so he can make his way over to assist his neighbor on the north property line mow his area. So I'm amenable to you revising the plan further to relocate the high bush blueberries we were talking, you have the section where it says lawn edge between the existing cultivated blueberries and the rest of your proposed Carolina rose. If you can do something over in that area, I'm fine with that. So he would be able to continue to mow and head over towards his neighbor to assist him. So that was one thing. We did talk about no more adding to a brush pile that's on Mr. Edwards' property, and putting grass clippings. So he knows to clean up some of that, stop putting grass clippings from his pasture area over there. And to the east of the area where you have proposed Carolina rose, up in that same corner, he's been storing the wire fencing and rolls and metal stakes and everything. Yeah, up in that area where you have the hand, right there, right along the edge of the wetland there. So he's going to, maybe once you get the barn in or something, he has to clean that up and remove that. And then we talked about the history, because I was out there many, many years ago. His daughter was, they're going to host the wedding or have a wedding on site. And he had gone into the overgrown bog area at the time. So I had talked to him about no more cutting in there. But the conversation about the existing paths that were there, he talked to the commission before, asking if they were okay with him continue to use the paths as long as they stayed no more than 4 foot in width. So I'm recommending that the paths be located on this plan, because this seems to keep coming up. I kind of forgot what we had said and agreed upon. So that where you have the old path that just kind of ends, that goes over a small little 2-board walkway over the wetland. And then you continue out, and it goes all the way out to the pond, and there's a bench. And there's an area that's kind of open. We talked about he's not doing any weed whacking or cutting vegetation. He just picks up sticks that blow down and stuff. So, and then the path comes along the eastern property line. So there's a loop, and then then you go back around by the old chicken coop. So old path down to the bench, and then back up the eastern property line. And I don't have a problem with it. I don't know if any other commissioners walk that, but I do think it should be located on a plan, so just everybody understands this.
I think it's important to have that trail on the plan, so we have that record per se. Louise?
I'm wondering about the Carolina rose up along the northern border of the property. Why isn't that more closely aligned with the border of the wetland?
So I could answer that through the chair.
Yeah.
So the reason for that is that, Mr. Robbins has been farming this land since the early 70s and always used right to the edge of the wetland. So you're right to ask that. The main reason is that whole area is full of fences and, different farming stuff. I don't know that he wouldn't be, have permission to continue to farm and use that, but Darcy, would prefer to have that removed, and Mr. Robinson, would acquiesce that. Well, I would say, why don't we do this? Why don't these high bush blueberries like the sun, and they would have done better here. But if we put sweet pepper bush all in that area and get rid of all that fencing, we could return this whole corner to native habitat. But that's to answer your question. That's why we didn't go in there, because it's all the fencing and stuff. But if we're going to get rid of the fencing, let's take advantage of that and bring that buffer right back and make it contiguous. And in that manner, I think, Darcy, we could pick up the 640 square foot. So I could bring in a revised plan, revegetating that whole area, put a note about the pile, show the other path, and I think you guys could then have a nice win-win here.
Yeah, Darcy just said that he had agreed to remove all that fencing and wiring and stuff. So
yeah, but then
it didn't be like it was vacant anyway. So I think that's a great plan.
Yeah, I think that's a win-win.
Can I ask one more question while we're on that part, Tom? So, thank you. So if you did clean that up and then slide that over and have the sweet pepper bush, he still has the ability to make it to the neighbors to do the mowing that he would like to do?
We'll make sure that happens by leaving a little radius for the tractor to get around that corner of the garden. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll make it work. Yeah.
I would prefer just at least some go where you have lawn edge between the cultivated blueberries and the proposed Carolina rose or sweet fern. There was one place where the lawn goes right down to the edge.
Yeah, we could infill over there, and that's a sharp bank anyway, so that would be fine. We'd be very happy to do that.
Oh, and there's just the fountain water feature. Since you're showing the trees and everything, could you show that on the plan too? Because that is in the 50-foot buffer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I thought it was a good project. So.
Yeah, it is. It's nice to see a working farm. It's very, very, very pleasant. Yeah. Thank you.
Larry?
Thank you, Tom. I had a nice visit with Mr. Robinson this afternoon, and then George followed me in. But the thing that I learned was about this area here where proposed blueberries are supposed to be located, and the prospect that he had discussed with Darcy about relocating them because of the sunlight and the other intrusion upon fast-growing plants in here. The purpose for maintaining a path is just to be able to get access to keep the vegetation from overpowering the garden, and that seemed reasonable. I didn't. If he's going to mark the path in there, I don't. That's fine. It looks like the path really has three particular areas. One is north-south, the other is on the curve, and the other is northwest to southeast. I don't know that there's any differentiation in that area, but from the comments that Darcy has made down in this area where you have this path out to the pond, it looks like the path has a consistent purpose with how it's always been used. And if I'm interpreting it correctly, then that makes plenty of sense for it. And I think that I'd recommend there be some flexibility up here once the materials are removed from this area. Dan, you could come back with a letter or some brief description of the proposal, but right now the condition should simply be that this triangular area here would be planted in consultation with staff, so the last minute changes could be made without having to come back for another hearing about something that appears to be universally accepted. So that's the approach that I would take.
Thanks, Larry. Then the only thing I needed from here is some dimensions, especially for the vegetable garden. If you can put some dimension on there so we can know what the dimension is. Other than that, I think this is a pretty good project, as Darcy and all the other commissioners mentioned. Chadwick, any public comment? Oh, Darcy, you said something?
I'm sorry, I did forget one other item that Mr. Robbins and I had talked about. On the loop path, the eastern edge going along the property line, I would recommend, you might want to talk to him, Dan, the path goes down into the wetland there, and it's full of leaves, so it's like leaves have been placed there to be able to get through the wetland. I would rather have that stop in some time, maybe the leaves taken out or they just finally decay, but put boards across like they have on the other old path section where it crosses there. I'd rather not have it go down through the wetland, into the wetland, and leaves put in so you can get across. And he does say it gets wet there.
Yeah, not now, but some
right.
wet year, yeah. Pretty dry now. That would be fine. And it's such a modest, just a little ditch crossing. It's the old, just so people understand, it's the old perimeter ditch of the cranberry bog. It's kind of a leaf pile that you walk over. We'll put some boards there instead. And that would be absolutely no problem.
Any more questions? Any more comment from the commissioner? None. Channel 18, any public comment on this one?
Seeing none, unless Mr. Robinson has anything he'd like to add.
Mr. Robinson, do you want to say anything on this? Do you have any question for us?
I guess he was pretty satisfied. It was just like he talked about with Darcy, so that sounds good.
Okay. So Darcy, if I miss anything, let me know.
Okay.
Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the dimension of the vegetable garden and the existing trail, and the benches locations and the planting locations that you're readjusting, and a couple of boardwalks in the wetland area.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili?
You haven't asked for the motion yet, has he?
Yeah, he just did.
Oh, was there a second?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Moran?
Aye.
Sampu?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Good luck, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Robinson.
And thanks you as well. We really appreciate it.
The last NOI of the evening is John and Don Sala. Additions to single-family residence, pool, shed, patios, fence at 91 Wood 149 Marstonville, as shown on the Assessors Map 077 Parcel 008. Mike.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Commission members. This is Mike Ball from Marsh Matters Environmental, joining you tonight on behalf of, or representing rather, John and Don Zola, who live at 91 Route 149 in Marston's Mills. They've got a small 1 acre lot. They've got a house, 3-room, 1-story house constructed in 1774. They purchased it with the intention of adding on to it to provide more living space for their small family. It's up on the hill if you've been there. It's overlooking Marston's Mill River, where the river joins into that water body down near the intersection of Route 28 and 149. Resource areas.
Mike, you want to show the plan where you're talking?
I can share my screen unless Darcy has it available. What would you prefer?
Oh, I made you screen share, so I let you know, so I didn't bring the plan up. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. No, that's fine. Let me,
Thank you.
Yeah, let me bring this up here. Well, not a pro at this. Can you see that?
No. Not yet.
Yeah. Okay, hold on a minute. All right. Got it. Hold on. How about that?
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's see here. Great. Okay. Just in terms of geographical reference here, so that's where we are, project location. Let's see, there's an aerial showing the property, approximate property boundaries. That is just the, that's just showing you, that's from Mass Mapper. It's showing you that just a small portion of the area is within priority habitat associated with the river. Here's our proposed project location. I will go to the site plan. There we go. Okay. Okay, so here's the existing house. As you can see, it's pretty small. The addition is going to be on the side of the house away from the riverfront area. If you've been to the site, you'll see that most of the outer portion of the riverfront area is altered. It's resulting from the construction of the house long ago, plus clearing over time. So what they're proposing is an addition and a small pool with a patio. They got a 12 by 10 shed they'd like to put in and a small stone patio off the other side of the house. As part of this project, in order to meet the requirements under the riverfront regulations, specifically to make the riverfront area better with the project than the existing conditions, we are proposing mitigation, which is this plan right here. And I do believe that by revegetating fully revegetating the inner 100 feet of the riverfront area and the entire BVW 100-foot buffer, we are improving conditions over existing. There is a proposal for a retaining wall, which would be placed in a manner to allow a level area for where the pool would be in a small area of lawn. And the planting area for mitigation would be on the river, obviously the river side or the downslope side of that stone retaining wall, which would be about 3 feet in height. Let's see what else we have here. We are needing to remove one oak tree on the north side of the house, very close to where the addition footprint is. In terms of stormwater management, we are adding dry wells to the new structure and the existing structure. Any necessary pool drainage would be managed by this 400-foot galley off the corner of the pool. They are proposing a new garage here, but that's outside of the 200-foot riverfront area and therefore outside your jurisdiction. Paved parking will be modified slightly. Actually, some of the paving is going away and will be taken out by the new addition. That's pretty much the project in a nutshell, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions.
Mike, one thing is that we need on the drawing is the wetland flagging information, who flagged it and when flagged it.
Who and when?
Yeah.
Okay, now, on the drawing itself. Okay, I know I mentioned it that was me. I mentioned that in the narrative, but you want it on the plan.
Right.
Okay. I can have more do that.
Louise?
Thank you, Tom. There was a large oak tree that was sort of in the, I would say, northeast portion of the project area. I'm not sure if that is actually in our jurisdiction or not. What is the story with trees? Are you going to be losing a bunch, or?
The only tree that will be removed is this oak right here. If you can still see my screen, I could bring up a photo. I'll flip through these photos. Obviously, that's the house. I've tried to indicate where the footprint of the house will be. That's kind of giving you an idea of where that small pool would be. Let's see, this oak right over here, this actually is, I'm not sure of the orientation, but that one you might be curious about. That one can actually stay. The Zolas don't see a need to remove that. I think it's the one that's off picture here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just one oak on that side of the house that needs to be removed.
So that one in the picture is going to be removed?
So it's not this one.
Okay.
That's downslope. It's the one that would be, it's right off the edge of this driveway. So right to the right of this car. I don't have a picture in the NOI packet. I could probably pull one from the file, but going back to the plan, we're only indicating this one oak tree. I don't believe there's any others.
Is there any plans to replace that at all, or?
I mean, we could incorporate an oak into the planting area. I hesitate to just plop an oak next to an adjacent wooded area already. We could certainly do that. There's just it's pretty closed in to begin with. You can see where they've put in the edge of the woodland. There might be some room down here by the shed. I suppose my suggestion would be to put maybe an oak in the vegetation replacement area.
Okay, thank you.
John.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I kind of agree with Mike. When I was out there looking at it, I don't think you're going to miss that oak very much. And I think that the proposed planting plan really is a significant improvement over the site now. So I think it's a pretty good plan the way it is.
So thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner?
Yeah, Pete.
Pete.
Yeah, I'm with Abel on this. I think it's fine, and certainly don't put another oak in there for the gypsy moths to chew, or the winter moths to chew. If you're gonna put a tree in, put some other kind of tree. Get some get some diversity.
Yeah. There's a bunch of oaks out there, Pete.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need more oaks.
Thanks, Pete. Any other comment from the commissioner? I just got a very simple question. Are you adding, when you're adding the new additions to the house, are you adding any bedrooms?
This is, let's see here. These are the plans done by, let's see who did these. I think Steve Cook did these. So we've got, sorry, I should have this information on the tip of my tongue. Okay, so this gives you a look at the proposed floor plan, first floor plan. So it looks like we've got one bedroom here, second floor, first floor plan, nothing in the new addition other than that one bedroom, and that's living space and dining area on the first floor. Looks like they've got an existing bedroom in the existing house, and then they've got a relocated bedroom here. So they're pretty cramped in all together right now. I think there's 4 people living in this very small house. So they're just adding a master bedroom on the second floor. And from what the property owner says, he does not need to upgrade his septic system.
Channel 18, any public comment on this one?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the wetland flagging information?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Byrne,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck, Mike.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have one amended order, Pond Restoration LLC's to modify alum treatments, timing, and approach in Parker Point at 379 Parker Road, Barnstable, as shown in the Assessors Map 115, Parcel 022. Who is Matt?
Yes, hello, good evening, everybody. Matt Ladwig from TRC. I believe the applicant is here as well on the call. We're here before you tonight with this amendment request, focusing essentially just on the alum treatment component of the order of conditions that was already issued for the pond earlier this year. As you remember earlier this year when we presented the project, Parker Pond, essentially just to sort of set the stage for you, is a pond that has had recurring issues with cyanobacteria blooms over the years. They're persistent, they last a long time. As we all know, they can be toxic. So the applicant decided to try to do something about this, and we worked with him and the town to pull together a treatment management plan that would work to improve water quality in the pond over the long term. When we last came before you, we had not yet completed an alum dosing study that has since been completed, and we have the results which were provided as an attachment to our request for the amendment. Basically, what we're asking for tonight is a couple of simple changes to the alum program that was approved. As you may remember, this is included in Special Condition 17, where the alum treatment was conditioned. The first thing we'd like to ask for is that the alum treatment be allowed to proceed as part of what we had designated Phase 1 of the management program. We had split it into 2 phases. Phase 1 would occur this year, and then Phase 2 would occur as warranted in future years. We think we have good cause at this point to allow the alum treatment to proceed based on the data that we have. So we'd like to accelerate that schedule and complete the treatment this fall. And then secondly, we'd also like to actually split the dose into several treatments, specifically 3 treatments is what we're planning at this point. We had originally anticipated that we would do it as all as a high dose single treatment and be able to lock up all the phosphorus and the sediments that way. But upon completing our study, we actually determined that the phosphorus was not present in exactly the way that we thought it would be, that we had anticipated it would be in the sediments. Essentially, although we did find iron-bound phosphorus, which is what we thought would be contributing to the majority of the internal loading from pond sediments. We also found a high amount of organic bound phosphorus. And these two types of phosphorus, although they can be released to surface waters in much the same way over the course of the year, there's a slightly different way that they are actually released. So iron-bound phosphorus would typically be released when the pond goes anoxic, which we know it has in the past up to about the 10-foot contour, whereas the organic fraction would be released more lockstep with temperatures. So the warmer it gets, the higher the release rate of the organic phosphorus. So looking at what we had, we think it's actually a better approach to split this alum dose into 3 treatments. Start with a larger treatment up front this year so we can knock back the internal phosphorus loading pretty significantly. And then through the monitoring program that we'll have in place, determine when the next dose should be applied to the pond. And that would be a smaller dose. Right now, we're kind of thinking that would be year 3. But again, we want to let the data guide us. And then ultimately, and this may be beyond the window of the current approval, but we would anticipate probably doing another treatment in year 4 or 5, again, depending on what we see in the data. And that would get us the total dose that we need to the sediments, but it would do it in such a way that we think we would be maximizing the effectiveness of the treatment over time. And we don't anticipate that there would be any significant increase in impacts. In fact, in the individual treatments, you know, we see them as even more manageable since they will be a lower dose at any given time. So that's sort of the essentials that we're requesting. Really, we only envision this requiring a change to Special Condition 17 at this point, and I'd be happy to open up to any questions unless the applicant has anything else to add at this point.
Before I go to the commission, I think Darcy has invited Amber to provide some comment, and Amber is here. So I'd like to get Amber to speak about her comment and try to address those questions first. Amber, welcome.
Hi, commissioners. Thank you for the time. Amber Unruh, Town of Barnstable, Department of Public Works. I have already reviewed the information that the applicant provided for tonight's meeting. And I did have some questions that I sent, back to Darcy, and the applicant has responded to. Some of my concerns about, what was presented was whether or not they had considered the pH and alkalinity conditions of the pond relative to applying alum. They responded that that is a consideration and that they have taken that into consideration as part of their approach for applying alum in any year. I also was wondering about the amount or the surface area in which they're anticipating applying alum going up to the 5-foot depth contour. As Matt just described, there's a lot of organic bound phosphorus compared to iron bound phosphorus. Previous alum treatments in this town have typically focused on areas that were in the anoxic zone, which is also associated with a lack of aquatic biota living in those sediments, so that when the alum lands there, it's not necessarily going to be detrimental because nothing was living in those sediments. They've indicated that, applying the alum, up to the 5-foot contour would just help bind to the additional organic bound phosphorus in those sediments. It's unclear to me what kinds of effect that would have on aquatic biota. So perhaps the applicant would like to address that a little more. And then I was also wondering about the concentration of phosphorus that they were trying to achieve in the pond post-alum treatment. It looks like they're aiming for something around 20 micrograms per liter. Without having a full pond study, it's hard to tell if that will achieve the goals of the pond. We have many ponds in town that have that type of phosphorus loading and don't always experience cyanobacteria blooms, but lower levels of phosphorus are always better for long-term prevention of those blooms. And then I guess one other question that I've thought of, just listening to you speak tonight, Matt, would be what a dosing amount constitutes a low dose alum treatment? And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Matt.
Yeah, I guess I'll go back to the first question that Amber was looking for some follow-up on, the impacts to aquatic organisms, aquatic life, specifically in the shallower areas that don't go anoxic during the summer. And I think what we've provided in our plan is a way to do the treatment. We're going to do a buffer treatment with sodium aluminate as well as alum. And really, that's what's critical to ensuring good flocculation of the alum. And I'm using alum as a general term for everything that we're putting in. And essentially, once that chemical has flocculated, it's still chemically active and is looking to bind phosphorus, and it will also strip particulates out of the water column. But it's no longer free aluminum that can interact with biology very easily. So we really don't expect there to be much of an impact from that on organic life, or sorry, on aquatic life, because of the way that's being applied and the way that we're being careful about making sure we're getting good flocculation and maintaining a buffered system where the pH swings are not going to be triggering any issues. So that's the first question. I think there might have been a question in the middle, or maybe just a comment from Amber. I'll skip to the end, and if Amber, you want me to reiterate anything, let me know. What constitutes a low dose treatment? That's a good question. I don't know if there's really a technical threshold. I can say definitely it has a lot to do with approach. So if you're targeting phosphorus in the sediments, you're typically not doing low dose treatments. Usually low dose treatments are really targeted at just controlling phosphorus in the water column for that season, or even in some really bad lakes, just for a few weeks. And in this case, we actually are going with I would say an intermediate dose between a low dose and a high dose, where we are targeting the sediments, but we're trying not to rush it, trying to do it kind of slowly over time and make sure that we get the maximum benefit.
Great. Yeah, you did answer all of my questions. Thank you very much, Matt, for answering all my questions. That's all I have.
Thank you, Amber. Bill?
I have sort of long-term concerns. The Parker Pond is loaded with phosphorus. It's organic and it's iron-bound, mainly organic. It has no outlet. And so what you have is what you have, and you are potentially going to be having more phosphorus coming in. And I remember vaguely the last time that we met, I remember Pete saying, gee, can you keep the ducks out? Yeah, we'll try to keep the ducks out. And, I don't recall what real measures were being made to try to stop the phosphorus loading of this pond. And before we get into what is being done to try to stop phosphorus loading, I'm just thinking that this is, I have no problem right now. Yeah, okay, let's put some alum in. Okay, we're good for, 5 years, 10 years, what have you. But if you keep doing this, and you keep doing this, and the stuff, phosphorus is coming in, and it's organic, and we keep treating, you're going to have so much aluminum in there. It's going to turn into, I'm concerned what we're doing to this pond long term. It's going to become this aluminum place you could mine aluminum. I'm being facetious, but I mean, it seems like there could be some real toxicity there. And so I think it's really important that we have fairly, if you will, stringent monitoring, biological monitoring, pre, post, something that's credible that we can then, as we go in time, see what's happening to this poor pond, because this is not going to be something that, yeah, we'll do it 2 or 3 times. This sounds like this is what Parker Pond is going to be managing. And eventually all that aluminum is just going to build up and we got trouble. So that, I'm concerned about that. So what biological monitoring are you doing? And also, what are you doing to try to stop the input of phosphorus?
Yeah, I think so. As part of the original order of conditions, there were requirements to do some mitigation with vegetation on the golf course end of things. We also had Utrazorb bags that were going to be installed, and those were installed earlier this summer. It would actually bind phosphorus in the water column as opposed to the sediments. And we've just started with those, so we don't know what the results are just yet. We don't really have enough data. But those would essentially be put in and then pulled out of the pond, so they wouldn't be sitting there in the pond. So those are being used to also help control some of the additional phosphorus sources or ambient phosphorus in the water column. I think that's essentially what we had so far. I don't remember if there was anything else. As far as the biological monitoring goes, there is some biological monitoring that we included specifically in recommended language that we provided to the commission via staff earlier today during the treatment, just to make sure that there's no acute impacts to aquatic life during the treatments. Otherwise, I think a lot of it is looking at levels of ambient levels of phytoplankton in the water column over time, seeing if we're achieving what we really want to get with regards to additional clarity via Secchi disc measurements and that sort of thing.
Are you looking at invertebrate production?
No, not at this time.
Invertebrate production? No animals? You're not looking at animals?
Not at this time. I think the theory here is that if we have cyanobacteria blooms that may be toxic, and that's sort of the priority management concern. And we want to do what we can to eliminate those, because those toxins can affect more than just humans. It can affect terrestrial animals as well as aquatic life as well. And definitely, we would hope to see improvements as well in dissolved oxygen levels in the water column. If we're limiting the amount of primary production that's happening in any given year, we should have less biological oxygen demand over the course of the year, thereby hopefully improving dissolved oxygen levels in the pond, and that should benefit aquatic life.
Yeah, actually, both Matt and Amber having 3 lighter loadings of your alum instead of 1 big one, great idea. If you can, again, just get some vegetation or even fencing around the edge of the pond, it does keep your geese from walking in. We have experience in Hamlin Pond where they used to have duck farms. Alum treatment they applied in there, and it's a great trout fishery now because there ain't no more duck farms there. So I like the fact that you are actually removing water column phosphorus with the bags that you mentioned, and you're actually removing that from your system. So you are getting a loss there. Not only a flocculation and sink into your sediments, but you are actually pulling stuff out. So if you can keep the ducks out, I think you got a good plan. Ducks and geese. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Larry?
Well, I didn't come into this hearing with any scientific knowledge, and I don't think I can acquire a laudable level of it. But thanks to Matt and Amber, they very deftly blended in lay terms or quasi-lay terms enough for me to comprehend it. And in the process, I love Bill's clarification. I thought he extracted some really good issues, and Pete bolstered it. So my feeling is that I see 2 things that are going to have to be monitored. One is the impact from the golf course into this pond, and the other is the decision to put signs up to tell the geese they're no longer welcome. But that being said, I think that I think this is a very well managed, very well put together project. And if it has to come back again, I think all of us are going to be better informed. And I think that Matt and Amber, you're going to have positive reports to put that your recommendations have come to fruition. That's the way I see it. So thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Matt, have you got the DEP approval in terms of how much alum can you add?
So DEP would approve the permit that the applicator would apply for themselves.
Right.
So we don't have that at this point, but we can't get that right now until we have the amended order of conditions that needs to go into the application to get the actual treatment permit. But I don't see that being a problem.
Okay.
We've never had an issue with that on any other alum projects.
So one of the things that we were talking about is, I know right now we just got your recommendation and some of the terms in terms of the special conditions for the permit on the amended order. But I think we need some time to kind of looking at that and trying to craft up the special conditions for this one. So I will be probably looking at like at least, towards the end of September to come back with the special conditions. Would that be okay with you?
So I think right now we're thinking that the tentative schedule for the treatment would be end of October.
So that's fine then.
So that should, as long as it clears the, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Appeal period and all of that.
Bill, do you have another comment?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. The commission is probably not going to support what I'm advocating, but I don't like this project without biological monitoring, looking at what this alum treatment is doing to the invertebrates. I just, there's something about it where I for the short term, I think this is fine, but I don't believe this is going to be a 3-dose. Now we're done. Weren't we happy? We got the. I think this is very long term, and you're starting essentially a, if you will, slippery slope that's just going to keep going and going and going. And so I'm not thinking I'm supportive without having some more than just looking at what the cyanobacteria levels are, or the algae. I mean, I don't like it. So that's where I'm at.
So what so Bill, Darcy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to read something that was in the Hamblin Pond alum treatment when we did alum in Hamblin's Pond, and see if this condition makes you feel a little better, Bill. If we had a condition, so monitoring shall proceed before, during, and after the treatment. Monitoring just before the treatment shall include measurement of nutrient levels and alkalinity at the top and the bottom of the pond, plus assessment of pH, temperature, oxygen, conductivity, turbidity, and Secchi transparency as profile over the complete water depth at 3.3 foot, 1 meter intervals. Phytoplankton and zooplankton shall also be sampled and assessed. Monitoring during the treatment would include surveys of alkalinity and pH several times per day, near and away from the treatment barge. They were allowed to do, they did this through a barge. And the assessment of any signs of stress for pond biota based on visual assessment and pond periphery, and underwater viewing with video system. Monitoring after the treatment shall include monthly surveys of nutrients, alkalinity, pH, temperature, oxygen, conductivity, turbidity, Secchi and transparency, phytoplankton, zooplankton through September following treatment, and again in June through September the following year. They had a condition daily after each application, a visual inspection of potential flock drift zone must be conducted by a professional look for harm to fish. That's because we had the problem with the fish at Hamblin's Pond. So I don't know if that helped, that type of a condition with that much. Does that address some of your concern, Bill, if we had?
Well, there is some looking at stress to fish, and there's more to it. I mean, I'm thinking, I just attended something that Amber did for Shubal Pond, and they're working on trying to stop the phosphorus loading. And it's a meaningful phosphorus loading issue. And I work on the Indian Pond Association issues with the Indian ponds, and they got Mystic and you got Hamlin. And you got really deep ponds, which are much more amenable to a treatment. It'll last like 15 years. And or even 20. And it's like, one hit and you can generation worth of good water quality. But these small ponds that, like Parker, I just envision how many are there like this, and does it just turn into like a salt bath? That's dead, a dead salt bath. And just looking at the plankton and the the physical parameters, you're not really seeing what's happening to the poor animals in the lake. That's my concern in the pond. Yeah. So yes, I think what you just said is better, I guess. I mean,
well, the other things too is that don't forget, our order of conditions is for good for 3 years for a short term. So we are looking at that with that window of the 3 years. If they have to come back and do anything more, that would be another story in terms of the other one.
And maybe I'll vote yes, and then I'll go crazy in 3 years. But there's a point where this can't just keep going.
Yep, understand. Larry?
It's easy to volunteer somebody else's services. Matt, I'm looking at your picture on the screen, and Amber, I know you're right in the next window. You may have some ideas as to bullet items or things you could contribute to the drafting of conditions. My thought is to have a timetable of, say, within the next 2 to 3 weeks maximum, the draft points be submitted. I'd like to see Bill participate. It's who I'm volunteering, Bill. I'd like to see you participate in the crafting of these conditions and then run them back through Tom and Darcy and Pete. But let's have a contribution, a joint effort here to speed it up so that by the time you get to a point, say by the end of September, you could have enough conditions in there that would be flexible. And then, Matt, you could then go on with your project after the end of September. That's my thought. I recommend that approach be taken.
Thanks, Larry. Pete?
Yeah, my background in limnology and eutrophication, Parker Pond isn't Hamlin Pond. Hamlin Pond's got public beach. It's stocked by the state. It's a much bigger stratified lake, much more interest to the public. I think that what has been presented to us for a attempt to control the cyanobacteria, the growth of overall phytoplankton in the pond with these 3 treatments, let's keep it easy. Let's not put too much on top of this. Give it a try. You've got both the alum treatment and then the soaking with those bags. Don't load it up with too much. I think it's perfectly fine. Let's see what it looks like after that. I'm not worried about the long term. They come back to visit us, then we can address the long term.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. Amber?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Amber Unruh, Town of Barnstable. I just wanted to say, if there is an appetite to have like additional after this meeting to discuss any special conditions, I'm available to do so. Just wanted to let that be known.
We definitely need you, Amber.
Thanks, Darcy.
Yeah, we need you. So, Bill, do you want to be part of this draft?
I hear Pete and I hear you, Tom, and, keeping it simple now. But I do think that, and I'm talking, who knows, I could drop dead and I won't even be part of the discussion in 3 years. I mean, any one of us could. And it's like, I just caution the commission, whoever's left standing, in 3-5 years, let's think about what they're doing. And you got to get more serious. And I see Pete nodding his head. So I guess I don't see a need to go. I'm willing to, lighten up, but We just can't keep doing this here. I think there's a potential poisoning of that pond.
Yeah, we hear you. So, Channel 18, any public comment on this one?
None.
None? All right. Matt, I need a continuance to September the 27th, if I remember right, to come back with the special conditions. Is that okay with you?
Okay, on my end, applicant have anything to add on that?
That's fine. I wonder if I could ask, how long after the special conditions can we deploy the alum? I know the applicator has already set a potential date for the end of October, that being the best time. I don't exactly know the chemistry behind that, but does the September 26th give us time to deploy October 25th?
Tom.
27. I think
27th.
so.
Okay, it does.
Yeah.
Tom, excuse me, but do we need to have this come back to the commission, or just
Yes.
leave it to those experts to
No,
to
don't
write
leave it
special?
to, no, we
You
want
want it
to
to come
bring
back,
this.
Darcy?
Yep, we did it last time where we said we were gonna leave it to Amber and I to do, but no, it's coming back. Sorry, John.
Coward.
So just as a heads up, I'm going to be out of state on the 27th. I don't think you need me, but just a heads up.
Okay. Okay.
We can send, we'll have time, if we go to September 27th, we would have time to send a draft out to you, Pete, to look it over.
Yeah, yeah.
And yes, I have no problem. Don't worry about them not having time to be able to do the treatment in October, because we would be able to, if we have a draft order of conditions, and Kim and I can kick the permit out a few days after the hearing, and then you just have to wait your short appeal period, the 10 days or whatever. So.
Okay, perfect.
The only limitation that you would have is from DEP.
Right, right.
Okay. Could I have a motion to continue this matter to September the 27th?
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Abadili?
Aye.
Sampu?
Aye.
Moran?
Aye.
Foster?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Hearn?
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the September 27th. We have two continuance. The first one is amended order standing the Victoria proposed changes to the original order of conditions, including the relocated wall along with proposed pool, patio, shed, and deck at 55 and 61 Beechwood Road, Sandyville, as shown on the Assessors Map 252, Parcel 182 and 008. This is the continuance from the August the 9th. I think the quorum is everyone. Dan.
No, Mr. Chairman, I think that Bill is not eligible for this hearing.
That's true. That's right.
Sorry. So it's 6 of us. Dan?
Good evening, Chairman Lee, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and a civil engineer with Downkeep Engineering in Yarmouthport. Stanley Davatoria is on the call, and also his attorney, Jonathan Poloni, is here if there's any questions of a legal nature. You'll recall we had pretty much fleshed this one out last time. We had talked about removing absolutely everything from that was extra in the red zone, except your, let me share my screen here so we can talk about that in an intelligent manner. So here's the plan. You asked me to come back, and we've got two sheets here to the set, one showing a few more nuts and bolts and the other one detailing the plants, but perhaps this one is easy to look at. You had asked us to remove the outdoor shower, remove all the little appurtenances around. We decided that the outdoor hotshot stove that's built into the retaining wall could remain. And as you recall, this green wall was replaced with the blue wall. So those are kind of a trade. And then the only thing, instead of a sharp slope, we had talked about leaving those two little steps, but getting rid of the walkway in between them. And that was just as a safety thing, because there is a steep wall. And if you had to get out of this end of the site, rather than leap over a wall over the Great Bound, well, it could have some steps up and then another little set of steps up. And the one thing that Stanley reminded me of is the ground is much higher here, and it would be an awkward slope between the steps without a little tiny wall. So we connected that wall in that manner there. So that's what we talked about. And we introduced a bunch of plants. We worked with Mike Ball, Marsh Matters, did the initial draft. He got busy, so we paid him for his time. And then we just continued that work and worked with Ed. Jonathan and I had a Zoom meeting to talk about the plantings. The only difference I would say is that we would respectfully ask for a trade, and that is that little 7x13 spa that's outside of the 50-foot buffer. It's landward of the vertical wall, and if you look at the next hearing that's coming up, you'll see there's a lot of times you do allow things within the 50 trading and so forth. But in any event, what we would do for that is over here, and that's highlighted by this large, extremely expensive drainage system. And what that is for, I would just like to show you in some photographs. The road drainage system, which the town did install, the water gets by it a bit here. And we'll probably talk to Griff over there at the town engineering department and see if they can build up these berms a little bit. But you can see it's leaking by up here. These are photographs that were taken at the latest rain event that we had, 1/8 of an inch or so. But you can certainly see the amount of water that's coming down there. So it puddles in front of our lot. This is the private road, Beechwood, but then it sheets across from the town roads, Chute Flying Hill Road and the road across the way. So we'll get as much as we can into that double basin, but what overflows that will join this puddle here, which is water coming down Beechwood here. You can see it coming from across the road and by that double basin. There it's coming by the double basin and it ponds onto the site. So we'll introduce a very large and extensive drainage system to handle that water. So it'll be about in the area of this. We'll depress the ground so that both the puddles will drain into it. It's a deep sump hooded catch basin leading to a secondary deep sump hooded basin to remove the TSS from the wastewater or the storm water. And what that basically is doing, you're taking out sediments and then you're taking out sediments again prior to infiltration. Then we've got two huge highway style basins tucked in between the trees on the side slope here, and we'll revegetate with native species and plantings. And because this is private, we feel that we don't really need an easement for it. We're doing it of our own volition, and some of the Beechwood Road is ours, so it's just a private drainage system. Stanley will maintain it, but in that manner offset that really small spa. You can see, I think, in one of these pictures, this is the spa that we're talking about, that one little cover there, and we'll push grass up all around it. So in trade for having that one little thing upward of a wall, and you've got a tiered planting below it with a 50-foot buffer, put in this, I would estimate at minimum of $30,000 worth of drainage to put in there to handle the private runoff and overflow from the public that used to unceremoniously run down the slope and probably certainly impacted the buffer and maybe even directly the pond. So that will supplement the town's new drainage system. And in case of overflows, I think is a nice net benefit for the town. So to speak to the plantings a little bit, Ed Hoops has spent a lot of time with us. He found a bare spot here that we could add some mitigation plantings to. We've tucked them in the end. We're removing some invasives along this west side. You could see the ivy, English ivy all along there, stripping that out and inserting, because it's got some sun over there, some wildflower mix. We'll put some temporary irrigation and make sure that lasts. The whole area of the sheep pile, we owed this anyway, so I don't mean to trumpet this as new mitigation, and it's not counted in the new mitigation. But certainly you can see there, we've got Mike's Arrowwoods and Northern Bayberries and a bunch of other plantings to infill that area. And then up on top, brought in many of the other planting types, all chosen from the cooperative extension list. You've got sweet fern, the creeping juniper, winterberry, northern bayberry, low bush blueberry, northern arrowwood, and high bush blueberry. And then there's a description of the meadow mix there, but all interspersed in this area. We'll pick up that catch basin in this area just to the east of the pole and put that down into the lower area. And in that manner, we wouldn't expect to have any runoff concerns. And don't forget that we're putting another highway style basin in here to handle east half of the roof and act as an area drain in this. And there's other area drains that go to a large dry well here. So I would respectfully request that, this be approved. Again, if you look at the site, it's almost all buffer here. The full 50-foot buffer is restored except for this tiny area. I think it's 70 square foot of wall and a tiny bit of walkway, which is just simply lawn, which isn't on a level surface, perhaps the worst thing in the world. Downgrading to that, you've got an engineered buffer with a little bit of stability from those sheet piles, which will be cut off at grade and replanted. And then the natural buffer down to the pond where we worked with Wilkinson Ecological to really restore some of the cuttings and the invasives removal and restoration of that area down there. So that would be the request. I think if you look at the presentation that's going to come on after this and some other ones that you've done, to have a small spot just outside of the 50 when Stanley really needs it. It is arthritis in the family, and it's something that they can do when the bog is, the pond is frozen in the winter. We'll have that large dry well there, be an ozone treatment, so very few chemicals. He's using pervious turf. We did look at that. I didn't see anything that was particularly onerous about particles of that, especially when you take a look at taking away all the insecticides, all the fertilizers, all the, everything from the CO2 from the lawnmower that you're saving. There's so many benefits to not having a managed lawn that I think that little bit of artificial turf, which, frankly, would just hold up a little bit better with the kids' foot traffic and so forth, and then would transition over to a more natural lawn on the east side. But it seemed to me I couldn't find anything that would be definitively a bad thing. And the town has used it extensively in the big ball fields and stuff, which are orders of magnitude bigger than this little tiny area here. So that would be the request. I know this spa was frowned upon before, but again, with a $30,000 to $40,000 drainage system, I told Stanley that we'd give it the college try here and see what you thought. And again, looking at even the hearing that's coming after this, I think it's a pretty reasonable request overall, big picture view, and we'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Before I go to the commissioner, I have invited Ed to come to this hearing at this time. He is with us right now. So Ed, give us your thought on this one when you're reviewing the plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as far as the planting plans go, I did actually run through it and review it with Dan and Jonathan about a week and a half ago or so. And so overall, I'm pleased with what they're trying to do. I do like the idea of putting the arrowwood down in that, using that as one of the main sources for restoration within that, between the wall, the stone wall and the vinyl wall. I mean, overall, you're always going to be at a loss. I mean, I think they certainly have filled in the spot that I was most concerned about over in the 50-foot buffer, which is the area that's right adjacent to that path that comes down off the steps off the western side of the property. So I think that was one of the one spot throughout that 50-foot that certainly stood out there. So I think that'll go a long way in fulfilling most of the 50-foot. Again, we'll always have that issue that there's not going to be completely undisturbed, but so that's overall, I don't have an issue with any of that. Because I had just noticed it last time I think it was last week when we were looking at it. Dan, are you in the area behind the portion of the wall that's still in the 50? That I think that would be also a good spot that you could be a candidate for more plantings in that, to just fill that in. What's probably 150 square feet, 200 maybe 200 square feet, 150 square feet of area would go a long way to help that as well.
So in other words, Ed, what you're saying is that like this strip here, introduce that in this area here?
Yeah, you would have to put something in. I think you could probably put something in there, but it's essentially between the 50-foot and the wall.
Yeah, I wouldn't see any problem with that. The only thing I'd ask is it's a little tight to get around the corner there. So if we could maintain 3 feet just so we can get through.
Yeah, probably.
Then I'd be no problem in filling the rest. That sounds reasonable. And that would, then we could say almost the entire 50-foot buffer is restored, except for, I think, 70 square foot of hardscape, which is, and then of course a natural path, which is always allowed.
Right. And then I think the other issue, and I think this is just more of a point for clarification, where you have the driveway, the existing driveway. It's actually a proposed, but it's existing.
Yes.
So I think that's just, you have the note where you're saying creating the buffer.
Yes.
And I think two things. Well, one main thing I think that needs to be established is have some sort of a demarcation between where that the edge of the proposed driveway and the planting area. So it's more defined. So in 2 years, 3 years down the line, we don't have some sort of a creep where it starts creeping into the mitigation area. So I think that's important to do some sort of demarcation along that line.
Would a cobble curb along that edge and then would vegetate everything north of that?
I think as long as it's something that's going to be fairly obvious. So so obviously people can drive by it and not run over it or grind it into the ground eventually. But
yeah, okay. Well, we'll work on that. I think a cobble edge, but you're right. And per the photograph you'd taken before, they did extend that over to the wall. So this is what's proposed is blue. We're going to pull that back, put in a cobble edge in the drive, and plant that whole area. We'll propose that in a revised plan. No problem.
Thanks, Ed. Question from Commissioner? John? John? You have to unmute yourself.
There you go. Sorry, Tom.
That's okay.
I want to go back to the very beginning of this. This was a vacant lot, small vacant lot with a fully undisturbed buffer. So you came forward with a plan to put in some hardscape, and we said since it's a fully undisturbed buffer zone, then go ahead and do it. Because of your own mistakes, the applicant's mistakes, you disturbed that 50-foot buffer. And you can tell me it's a small amount, but it is a disturbed 50-foot buffer. Under our regulation, that requires 3-to-1 mitigation for the hardscape put into the 50 to 100. You are far short of that, given the amount of hardscape that's in green, the amount of additional hardscape that you're adding, a proposal to increase that even more by putting in a 7 by 15-foot spa. And if you look at that, you're probably 10,000 square feet short of the amount of mitigation that would have been required if you apply the regulation. And you and I can disagree on the interpretation, but I can tell you that is my interpretation, and I believe the commission's interpretation, and I believe that's what we've applied before. You keep referring to the case that's going to come after this one. They are so totally different. They're not even the same ballpark in terms of issues from a legal point of view. So I look at this and say, I don't want to expand the hardscape any more than it's already there. I like the mitigation that's being offered, but I think it's insufficient. You could probably push me and say, okay, well, you've got a small lot, so it's basically constrained from the amount of mitigation you get on site. And I'd say, fine, then you know, you get about 8 or 9,000 square feet that you're short times $3.50 and, you know, write out a check for that difference. That to me is consistent with the past interpretation of these regulations. I think it is even more so in this situation disturbing to me that you had an applicant who has time and time again violated the permit, knowingly, after meeting with Darcy, after meeting with Ed, you know, time and again. So this is not a case of a mistake. This is a case, in my opinion, of somebody that has intentionally done this. So for us to give you an advantage over others, and I would say we would be if we approve this just the way it is. I could go along with the mitigation being offered without the spa and a fee in lieu of. That's where I would come out of this. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other comments from the commissioner? No one?
I'd like to make a comment if I may.
Just 1 minute. Let me go through with the commissioner first before I get back to you. When I'm looking at this and we're trying to draft that 704, and so I would pretty much, you know, try to interpret this site as far as the go along with the chapter 704, how we interpret it. Sometimes I'm kind of looking at that drainage systems. Is that going to improve the buffer zone? To me, it's 50-50. It's not there. So I'm leaning towards, you know, with John and recognize the site may be constrained and with a lieu fee. So that's my thought. Jonathan, you want to say something?
I can let Louise go first just to complete the.
Oh, sorry, Louise.
Yeah. In terms of calling this a constrained site, I believe that in lieu fee option was developed not for swimming pools, but for properties in which somebody, you know, would really like to enlarge their kitchen. They need another bedroom because they've only got 2 and their in-laws are going to move in, and so forth and so on. But it's not there for adding a spa or a swimming pool. I mean, this has come up before, and when swimming pools come up, vis-a-vis, well, can't we just pay for this with it? And in lieu fee, we have said this option is not to put in a swimming pool. This is for severely constrained sites where they need to enlarge their home to make it livable. So I am with John in terms of what John said, except I don't think the lieu fee is an option in terms of permitting that spa. You know, we have over and over gone through the spa question. There have been several hearings where we've discussed that, and each time we come away with, okay, but no spa, right? And then the spa keeps coming back in one format or another. So I'm not for approving the spa at all. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Larry?
I'm not going to attempt to debate or revisit John Abadili's thoughts on this, not because I think he's right or wrong, just because I think we've heard enough of it. I'd like to see some flexibility here. My concept of flexibility, I am not for or against the spa. I think the spa is probably more than is needed or deserved. A spa could easily be constructed inside of a house. You could have a hot tub or something in the house. A lot of people do that. And I don't know, Mr. Polini, if you're going to have some thoughts about this, but I value whatever you have to say. I think that notwithstanding the accusations, if you want to call them that, as to what has happened over the period of the last 2+ years, I think that with think Dan Ojala has rowed this boat down the channel as best he could under the circumstances, and I commend him for that. I think the concept of all the mitigation restraint and all the calculations of money here and money there, I see no usefulness to that. I also see absolutely no threat of any precedent that somebody may come back in and say, well, you let them do it, or I'm going to do it. That doesn't happen very much, and if it does, we're back to the standard we customarily use, and that being that each case stands on its own. And in that being the case, in this case, I don't think we have to make any findings saying we're making an exception. So that's my feeling. I'm in favor of this, and I'm not in favor of the spa. However, if there's 3 other people or other people that want the spa, I'm not going to oppose that. So that's where I stand.
George?
Thank you. You know, Dan, I think at the last hearing, I think it was me that said, okay, so you're coming back. I reiterated it. I said, you're coming back with a plan that's going to eliminate this, it's going to eliminate that, and it's going to eliminate the spa. And the answer was yes. So it's tough for us sitting here right now to have to look at the spa knowing that it shouldn't be there. So I agree with John, and I can't go along with the spa.
Yeah, I concur. And when the applicant first approached me with it, I says, there's no way. But then he says, look, I want to take and put a very expensive drainage system in here. It's going to cost me a ton of money. Wouldn't that offset it? Just this little tiny spa. And I says, well, I'll run it by this. I don't, I'm not sure that you'd agree with it, but, and I think spending $30,000 to $40,000 on drainage on site is a benefiting the next door neighbor, the guy across the street that drains on what's the whole of Beechwood Road and overflow from the town, and instead of letting it run down the bank uncontrolled to infiltrate it in, I mean that is a benefit, and it's a very expensive one. So that's why we requested it. But otherwise, I would have told him there's no way in heck I would approach the commission with it. But it did sway me to spend that much money on really it's not really his problem. He could have just, arranged the site to let the water run down the hill like it always has. But he didn't do that, and he's willing to do it. So would respectfully request to be able to put it in. But I understand the board's thoughts.
What do you think of that, Tom? Can I get your comments on that?
No, to me, it does not really benefit that much as far as the buffer zone goes in terms of the drainage. It's the roadway. So you benefit the neighbor, but not really on our jurisdiction area. So I would say no for that. And I would prefer take out the spa and do a new fee, be done with. Any other questions from the commissioner?
Councilor Polanyi, I thought was going to speak too, Tim.
Yep, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I wanted to address, I think specifically, John, your comment about your perception that this has been an intentional acts to kind of undermine the commission's authority. That's certainly not how I've seen it, and I don't think that's how my client certainly feels, though I understand where you've come to that perception. But just to go back again, like you said to the beginning, where this is all started with the first enforcement order, I just want to remind everyone that was addressed through Wilkinson Ecological. The area has been completely revegetated. There's an area, as you've seen, that's going to be added to and supplemented. But I haven't heard any complaints about the revegetation work that's happened there or how that revegetation is proceeding. I think that has been a successful restoration, putting aside the fact that it shouldn't have been done in the first place. The second enforcement issue came up from the construction of the retaining wall, which part of it was allowed to remain within the 50-foot buffer. However, you want to look at how that happened. That was an error in the construction. So that was not the client going down and telling people where to put something. That was people mistaking the flags that were there and putting the wall in the wrong place. So we've corrected that. And one of the significant things at that time was that the applicant on his own initiative came forward with a proposal to have someone come and monitor the site in order to address specifically these concerns of the commission about what was happening on the site. You know that Mike Ball was there and diligently reported to the commission from that point forward. So everything that happened on the site from that point forward was documented and shared with the commission. The fact of the matter is that this has been an active construction site. So like the proposed driveway that Edwin just pointed out was an area that was used for parking vehicles and accessing the inside of the house, which was still under construction during that entire time, as well as the area going down where they were proposing to build back steps and revegetate to access the lower levels. So I just think the idea that things have been added on throughout the course of this project without receiving approval is not accurate, and it's not a fair representation of the client's intentions here. So we may all disagree about what we want to see on the site, but the way that the applicant has gone about that is not designed to thwart the commission or undermine the commission's authority. And I think when we get through this project, which I know we're all looking forward to, Stanley is going to be happy to be living there, and he's going to accept what he has, and he's going to be a good steward of the land. And that is something that you'll have to take for face value from me right now, but we will see that play out. And I think you will see that play out going forward.
If I can, Council, I really do hope you're right in that. I mean, I sincerely do, for a lot of reasons, including Mr. Vittori's future. I was going back in many ways to the report that Darcy said at the last hearing, how many times she was out there and how many times he promised I'd do this and do that. And Darcy, you could jump in and repeat those and add the same thing. So I was kind of going back to those stories that the staff told us of the interactions with your client that sort of bothered me and said, geez, you know, and first they said, well, is it a language thing or something? And I really don't know the gentleman, so I don't know why. But the sense I got from the staff was that, you know, there were repeated times despite conversations with him personally. So I was reacting to that, in all honesty. Your comment about going forward in the future, I sincerely hope that you're correct and that it's a great life there and that the wetlands is protected. So let's hope.
I have no doubt that when the construction is completed, what will be there will be there. It will be according to the plan. You'll receive an as-built plan afterward. And I have no doubt that you're not going to see any more enforcement issues. I know I had a conversation with Stanley after the last hearing, and he has since acquired a mooring for the boat. So the boat will be moored in the lake. That will resolve that issue. And whatever the commission decides tonight, I think we'll round out the project. Hopefully we'll have something approved that we can then move forward and finalize.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted.
Thank you, Darcy.
Yeah, thank you. What we're talking about is after we said from now on, all was asked, all of a sudden there were still things added to this plan that came in that were already there that were never approved. That's what we're upset about. Like, I don't think like the spa was in, we never even had talked about that. And what about the fireplace? And so there's like 1,600 square feet of hardscape that went in between the 50 and the 100 that no one even asked us about. So how does that happen?
I think a lot of that work happened before the second enforcement request. There were a few things that I remember, such as the walkway from the driveway around to the front door that was not on any of the original plans. I don't think that was in place at the time the retaining wall was constructed and the second enforcement order came about. But I remember clearly having a conversation with Edwin about that. That was a detail we could add. So I remember more communication with the agents at that time going forward from the second enforcement request. And really the understanding was whatever other things are, any hardscape that's being added, it's going to have to be reflected in mitigation and some agreement about mitigation. So I certainly understand the difficulties. I think that my feeling was moving forward from the second enforcement request and the addition of Mike Ball, there was a change in the tone. And again, just to get back to completing the construction is going to resolve the issues because We will have a finalized plans, and it will just be a matter of submitting the as-built plan. I think going forward from that, Stanley knows what he can use the property for. Everything else has been clearly addressed. He's not going down into the 50-foot buffer and cutting stuff anymore. So he's going to have what he has.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, Commissioner, how would you like me to proceed with this one?
I'd love to hear from the other commissioners, Peter and Bill. We've heard from Louise and George. I'm just curious as to where the thinking is before a motion is made.
Yeah.
If they feel like it, you know.
Larry, did you raise your hand again?
I did. I'm trying to, I wasn't taking notes about the specific corrections that Dan Ojala was going to make, but here's a motion. I'm going to verbalize it and see if people's ears fall off. I recommend that the revised plan be accepted as filed, subject to the following. One would be a plan showing a deletion or removal of the spa, another showing the increase of vegetation with enough clearance at the corner of the bump out on the 50-foot buffer. I don't know how else to describe it. Another dealing with accepting the 2 segments of steps that have been put in there, and if Mr. Davatoria wishes to put in the drainage system, he's welcome to do so. I think it's a laudable idea, but if he wants it in there, then it would need to be included in the plan. If not, it wouldn't be. So, and if I've omitted any further changes, I haven't done so intentionally. I've tried to start us with something and see if there's a level of acceptance. That's where I am at the moment, and hopefully if they are, please bring it up.
Pete?
Yeah, so I'm not, hold a second. Yes, good, you can hear me, I'm not unmuted. So I'm not gonna mention anything about Larry's proposals, a bunch that seemed reasonable to me. I have had my memory refreshed, so thank you, Commissioner Abadili, for elucidating really with your mind the sequence of events here. And Darcy, I also appreciate your input on this. I think that the evolution of most of the conversation has been both fruitful and well-reasoned. Thank you.
Bill?
I am not voting on this.
Oh, sorry. But you can make
Huh? Say what?
But I said you can make comments.
And this is just such an ugly project. I mean, it's just been a bummer all along. I've listened to it, and I hear both sides. And you know, I mean, the idea. You know, Abo is concerned about precedent, and you know, there's something to be said for that. And then I look at this little spa, if you will, and I'm going, well, you know, at least it's back from the 50, barely. I mean, right? It's out of the 50.
Yes.
And yes. I'm like going, well, maybe it's okay. I mean, you know, this is a project that doesn't go away, and I'm somewhat glad I don't have to vote. So good luck, guys.
George?
Yeah, in addition to what Larry said, we should add curbing to the driveway. We should also add the planting between the existing wall and the 50. So with all that and the elimination of spa, I could see myself voting in favor.
Are you including the in lieu fee in there in terms of the mitigation calculations?
I haven't included it. I would vote for it if everybody else felt that was necessary. At this point, I don't know. Somebody else is going to have to speak to that. John, you're going to have to convince me.
Tom, can I just chime in one thing, please?
Tom? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The whole in lieu fee thing just bugs me. I mean, it's a 2011 value. It seems like, just such a small sum. And as we deal with 704, we need to jack that up to current inflation rate at least. And I just think using it, I don't like it. I mean, it just seems like paying off a very few thousand to do whatever, and I don't like it.
But that's what we have under the current regulation, and that's
I know. But I'm not someone who likes that, as I don't think Louise does.
Louise?
I would agree with everything George said. So that's where I stand. In terms of the in lieu fee, can you refresh our memories in terms of what the shortfall is in terms of the mitigation that is owed versus what is being offered?
So, the answer to that is it completely depends on which technique you take. But what we've all sort of framed it as is we're going to let what was approved previously go. We're not going to mitigate that. Although I would say if you take away those stop gates in the 7043, you would have to include those, and you'd end up having to mitigate. Well, it just wouldn't be possible to do, which we would see. But so bottom line is we're looking at 1341 square foot of hardscape times 3 is 4023, and we're proposing 1394. So we're proposing more than mitigation than hardscape, but it's nowhere near the 3 multiple. So we'd be looking at 2629 square foot. But I would just say the mitigation constraint might set a precedent. Why not just have them do some drainage on the site and put the money into the ground? And Tom, if you want to go out there, I can show you the old riprap swale where stuff was rushing down the slope. It was a real mess over there. And you probably didn't get down there because it's tucked in the trees, but there was a lot of water rushing towards the pond, and this will mitigate quite a bit of that. So I think it's money well spent.
Let's see, so just to get back to my question, that boils down to 1399, is that right? Shortfall?
Yeah, well, 2629 square foot, and what's the mitigation? Is it $3 a foot? I don't remember. Or
I'm not asking the dollars, I'm asking the square feet.
It's 350, I think, Darcy.
So yeah, 3.
But I'm not asking about dollars, I'm asking about square feet.
So a square foot was 2629 is my arithmetic of short on the square footage, using the set of parameters that we've all kind of decided on here. Now, that would include the spa, which I don't think, if I had to read the tea leaves, we're going to get, but that'd take 108 times 3 would be a few hundred square feet off of that. So you'd be on the order of 23 and change, 100 square feet, 2,300 square foot short.
Investing in the drainage system sounds like a good idea to me.
Just what I was going to say, Pete. In lieu, do the drainage.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know, Tom doesn't have time to study every little nook and cranny, but if we go out there, I think you'll see it'd be money well spent on this one. There was a real problem. The town solved about half of it. We'll solve the rest.
Well,
I'm thinking about the drainage options. If we do that we replacing the lieu fee, and we are removing the spa, and adding the vegetations in the 50-foot buffer and then providing the curbing. That's what Larry was proposing. I'll be fine with it. So let me try this and see how it goes. Could I have a motion to approve this amended order subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the planting within the 50-foot buffer? That's the area south of the existing retaining wall, and allow the curbing and removing the spa and keeping the drainage system as proposed,
and allowing the steps.
What?
Allowing those steps.
Yes, the red one on the steps and the retaining wall on that short sections. And we need an as-built drawing to exactly what it's showing after it's constructed.
And allowing the fireplace.
That's already on the.
Already in.
Okay.
That's already in. Yeah, yeah. So that's the motions.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Avadili.
No.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That motion carries.
5-1.
Appreciate your careful consideration very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last continuance is William M. and Susan B. Sullivan's proposed swim spa and patio improvement with all associated improvements, including mitigation in the form of bank restorations at 990 Main Street, Contour, as shown on the Assessors Map 034, Parcel 034. This is a continuance from August the 16th, and the quorum is everyone. Is that correct, George? George?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
John, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting. Also here in the meeting is the property owner and Katrine from Wilkinson Ecological. Since we were here last time, I will bring up a revised plan that has been submitted based on comments that we received last time. We have pulled the spa landward. We've reduced the size of the patio area. We've provided dimensions of the patio area, and we have provided, we found some additional hardscape that could be removed in the form of a walkway below this patio area. We've extended the restoration mitigation landward all the way up in the buffer to the edge of the proposed work. It was an additional 525 square feet. And I can flip to the restoration plan, which was also revised. So this was all additional, excuse my highlighter, all additional restoration area. And so that restoration, just the buffer zone restoration alone based on this reduced square footage is about almost a 9-to-1 mitigation ratio. We still have maintained as well the bank restoration, which I think that Wilkinson expressed last time and can reiterate if needed, will represent an improvement in terms of the stability on that bank and the diversity of that vegetation. And so I hope that we took guidance recommendations from the last hearing and are before you tonight with a project that can be approved. I think with that, we are here to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Louise?
Thank you. So the size of the spa has not changed, is that right?
That's correct. The size of the spa didn't change. We just pulled it landward and reduced the areas for the patio.
So how much did you pull it landward? what's the difference? Last week it was so many feet from the top of the bank. What is it now?
We pulled that spot about 3.5 feet further landward.
3.5 feet, okay.
So we trimmed about 200 square feet out of the project area. And then we had some additional walkways, existing walkway that we were removing this to further be offsetting.
Okay, so I was trying to understand your numbers before. And I noticed that in your calculations between what you showed last time we talked about this and what came in the mail yesterday, that the size of the patio, square footage of the patio / wall changed for existing. So, I mean, it's the existing number. So I don't understand how that could happen.
I think what we realized in revising this plan is that we had given the total area of patio and walls all the way up to the house, and there is this small kind of corner of it that is not within the 50-foot buffer. So that's why the existing went down, is because we are not including any of that small space between the 50 and the house. That area won't change. So there's really no change in the 50 to 100, but that's why the existing went down.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Did Bill raise up your hand?
Yeah, I did. And my main question was, what happened with the existing? Your existing went down. And you just answered that. That being said, you are looking to expand in the 0 to 50-foot buffer with a patio. And I guess I appreciate that you moved it back, but increasing patio space in the 0 to 50 is not something that I like.
Thanks, Bill. John?
Yeah, I sort of want to follow up on Bill's point because, and I think this is critical going forward. We generally are absolutely against expansion of a patio and especially a pool in the 0 to 50. And that requires specifically the granting of a waiver. So why would we grant a waiver? In my opinion, if the mitigation being offered is so powerful in terms of protecting or rebuilding or increasing the diversity and the filtration capability of the buffer, then it is worth granting a waiver. Otherwise, Bill, my starting point with a pool or a deck expanding in the 0 to 50 is, what are you, crazy? No. But again, I think every application requires a specific balancing of what is being offered against what is being asked for. And if what is being offered is, from a scientific point of view, going to significantly enhance the buffer's capability that was so intent on protecting, then I would be in favor of a waiver. I think that exists in this case. So that's where I'd be coming from.
And just to reiterate that number, the buffer zone restoration area alone is almost a 9-to-1 ratio, and the buffer and bank restoration combined is almost a 35-to-1. And I know the commission's been here for hours already, but we do have Katrine here who could speak more to the vegetation that are going into those restoration areas and why they're beneficial. I know they started in on that at the last meeting, so we'll maybe see what these other hands have to say before we decide how much to go into that again.
Thank you. Larry?
I thought from the moment I went out to the property, once I was explained by Sue Sullivan what the bank was like, I walked down and looked at it. I walked down these steps, looked across here, and then looked from the bottom up. I could see a lot of they weren't high quality vegetation. There were a lot of open spots. So I'm looking at this vegetation as being an improvement in quantity and quality, and the benefits from that in terms of erosion or runoff or wildlife. All of that, I think, is going to be a much higher quality of vegetation that will provide the customary benefits that we like to see put into those situations. This also, to me, is a two-part process. One is from the shoreline up is acknowledgeably steep, and it comes up to a bank. It shows here where all these little bricks look like, which must be whatever they are. Then it flattens out. So that's the second part. And the second part would be beneficial for activity off the patio and where the pool area is, that's going to cut off any runoff, but more importantly, it's going to integrate the whole replanting process. So I consider this to be a very noble project with the changes. I thought it was good before, but it doesn't mean I felt that the objections were not merited. So in this particular case, I recommend the changes as submitted.
Luis?
In calculating the additional mitigation, does that include replanting the part that has now got small marble chips on it that was established was going to have to get restored?
You know, the first time we did not include that in our area because it was outside of the bank restoration. So that area is included in our restoration. We did not count it as existing hardscapes. We didn't use it to offset anything, but it is part of that 500 some odd additional square feet that have been extended.
You're counting it as mitigation.
It is included in that restoration area, yes.
That should not be, because that area with the marble, I think they're marble chips or
shell. There's a area of shell.
It's shells, okay. That should not be there, and that was going to have to get corrected anyway. So, you know, I look at that as that 500 and some square feet shouldn't be that large a number. So that ought to get recalculated. And the other thing is, when we talked about this last time, a number of us said, gee, you know, restoration of that bank is nice, except that the bank is really in pretty good shape. And so do we think that restoring a restoration of a bank in that great or a relatively good condition merits putting a pool in the 50-foot buffer? And I thought the sense was no. So it seems to me that the difference in terms of the mitigation you're offering has to do with that 500 square feet, 500 plus square feet. And as I just said, part of that shouldn't be counted as mitigation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying, and I'm working on a couple of responses to that. So even if the shell was not there, even if it was grass today,
yeah,
I think that putting in plants, in buffer enhancement plants where there was grass would be mitigation. So
well, what if it were grass? I mean, I would have expected it would be just a continuum of what was on the bank, for example. I mean,
well,
I don't think that the 9-to-1 mitigation ratio is realistic.
So we did on this plan, based on the staff last time, kind of delineate where that existing area of shell is with this dotted line. And so I just took a scale to that, and that's roughly at, you know, it's not a perfect square, but roughly a 10 by 10. So, you know, if that area was 100 square feet, and you didn't want that included as mitigation, even though we would still be restoring it. So if that was only 425, would still be more than a 7-to-1 ratio, even just for the patio area, and not including any of the bank. And we had a discussion with the applicant after the last meeting, and he was kind of scratching his head and saying, I don't understand. They don't seem to, want the restoration of the bank. Should we be taking that off the plan? And we, and especially with Wilkinson, we're trying to advise them that that's, to the person who looks at the site in a 5-10 minute site visit, they may not see the benefit as much as someone who, can kind of really go through the plant inventory and the layers of what's there, and that, as a package.
Right. Well, certainly
the whole package from
it is 1,000 times more skilled than any of us are. But, I think we said, yeah, there may be some invasives on that, or even a lot of invasives on that bank, but they're holding the bank together. And that's what's supposed to happen. And some of those invasives are natives. So, is it really that much of a benefit to have restoration? It probably is some, otherwise Wilkinson wouldn't have said that, but is it as big a bang for the buck as it might be? So if you're saying that patio area is 100 square feet, and you that's kind of like 20% of the mitigation that you've added, right?
It is, yes. So it would still, if you wanted the math split that way, instead of a 9-to-1 just in the buffer, it would be more like a 7-to-1 just in the buffer.
Well, no, I mean, it depends on how you feel about the bank.
That's not including the bank. So with the bank is like 35-to-1. And if we took out that 100 square feet, it would be like 32-to-1. But just even in the buffer zone alone, not including that shell area, we're in the range of 7-to-1.
Wow.
And I think if you're looking at the bank right now in August, it's nice and green. Just even with this drought that we're having, it looks well vegetated, but there are at least three state listed invasive species: bittersweet, Japanese honeysuckle, and multiflora rose, that are really dominating and taking over and continuing. If nothing is done on this bank, that's what will be growing there. There's also bayberry, bracken fern, goldenrod, and those will be enveloped by the bittersweet and the multiflora rose. And it's really, right now it looks nice and green because of the season we're in, but when you would go to this bank in the winter, in the middle of the winter, I think you'd be able to see better that these species aren't holding the bank in place. Yes, it is a stable bank, but if nothing is done and these species continue to take over the bank, it's going to degrade the stability. And our land management plan talks about that, and talks about that grass layer, the native grasses that we want. The little blue stem has grass roots that go down, fibrous roots that go down at least 8 feet down into the ground. And that's what you really want to hold the bank in place, rather than these invasive species that don't really provide that root system, the fibrous root system. So I think this would be a very important project to maintain the stability, and also to provide better habitat. This is not great habitat for wildlife currently.
Thank you. Larry?
To unmute myself. I'm coming back to two things. Well, three things maybe. First of all, the Sullivans, through Sullivan Engineering, no relation, they hired Seth Wilkinson's crew to come in and really look at this. I value their evaluation of this much more so than any of us as individuals. We may look and see things, but we have not the level of expertise that we rely upon. In this case, and what Sue Sullivan just said confirms what the Wilkerson provided. The area, this 100 square foot oval up here, that was crushed shell, but it really was not impervious. It was because the water would flow through. There was nothing underneath that preventing from water going through. But that's really irrelevant because in the calculations, John O'Day just said, initially they weren't even counting the removal of that as hardscape. So John, I don't know whether that 100 square feet could just be subtracted. Would that appease other people? I don't know. But I completely disagree with Louise's approach to this. And I'm going to stick with the way I summed it up. And based upon what I saw and what I heard from the property owner and the fact that they built this house 14 years ago, and all they really had done up until that point was just this area from the top of the bank back. They hadn't done anything down in here. So now the time they came across and they're looking at it, I think it's a very well thought out project. And if you look at the if you look at the banks on either side, there was some controversy on the house next door at 994. We've ruled out whatever was done there. We're not comparing it as apples and apples. There were issues over here where they had to redo the bank. Good for them. But here, the same thing. They've renewed it here. They proposed to repair it. They've agreed to pull the pool back, so they've expanded the area here, which can be vegetated. Technically, it's within the 50 to 100. They should get some credit for that. I don't know whether, John O'Day, you're asking for credit, but I think we're getting swallowed up here by mitigation calculations, which sometimes just get blown out of proportion. So in that sense, I completely support it the way it's been submitted.
Bill?
I after hearing all of this, I am supportive of the project. I guess I have some concern about, plantings and whatnot on that steep bank. I just hope that that's done carefully. And, we have had some invasive species work that has really, basically just created a horror show with major clearing. So I trust you're not going to do that, but no, I'm good with the project.
Any other questions any comment from the commissioner?
I just have if the commissioners are done. Thank you, Tom. So question for Katrine on, okay, I understand the part about where the shells, that should have been a small section of lawn. Is that correct? And that question is probably for John, but where the crushed shells was, that was a lawn that was originally approved. Is that correct?
I don't have the whole file from when that house was done. We didn't do that work, but I think that's what I was trying to express to Louise was if it wasn't shell, it might, could it have been lawn? I don't know.
So if it was an area that was approved lawn, then if you were offering to plant that back in the restoration, that would be mitigation that you can use in my opinion. The area just beyond that. So I remember standing there at the bottom wall and looking up. That was already planted with certain plants. Do you recall what was in that area? It was a bank. It had I think like dark mulch on it and everything. So from that lower wall back to the north property line.
Going this way.
Yeah. What is already there, and could those plants being more not on the steepest part of the bank, could those size that you're proposing be larger than, I think you have one all the way down for all the native shrubs to be planted? I understand about putting smaller ones on the bank, but those are my questions.
Sure. Yeah, we could do, so we're proposing in that area, Sweet Fern and Carolina Rose. We could do bigger ones of both of those. If
Yeah, or maybe mix some additional one in or something.
Sure.
But do you recall what's already there?
I was just looking in the land management plan. There's a picture that kind of sees that.
Yeah.
Show, I think, and then looking past it,
H3
kind of look like some dead grass, and then does get into some plants more along the edge of the top of the bank, but
I just didn't know whether we should say that that's truly restoration if you already have native plants there. That was
that's not question. Native. It's more like non-native ornamental. The natives are more on the bank.
All right. So then I'm fine if they switch some of those, either add another species in some larger ones in the area that's before you go over the top of the bank.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like number 3 gallon.
Yeah. And then go around the corner a little bit up in that area where you have the sweet. Yeah.
Okay.
You're set.
I am.
10:18. Any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
We try this. Could I have a motion to approve this revised NOI? The date on this plan is August the 24th and August 25th for the landscape plan, but we need a revised landscaping plan to show this size, larger size, 3-gallon size, plus a third species in that area that Darcy was just talking. And we also need a annual report for 3 years and a written notification if there is a change on the landscaping contractor. In this case, it's the Wilkinson Ecological Design.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Sampu.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Fern.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye.
We have 5 EC certificate of compliance. Michael and Tricia Benton, SE3-4468. Carrie McNamara, SE3-4564. Jeffrey Chandler, SE3-5737. I have asked for ECC-0179. And the last one that I want to read is IL Temple SE and NE Vas LLC SE3-5967. In this particular one, I want to add a condition in there so that the commissioner, the commission will not make any determinations as to the ownerships of the subject parcel, because we have quite a few comments about the ownership of the parcel. So I just wanted to make that clear. Could I have a motion to approve the 5 sealed autumn compliance certificate of compliance with 1 conditions added to the IL Temple SENE Vas LLC on that conditions that the commissions will not make any determinations as to the ownership of the subject parcel.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
So can we have a brief discussion about this, Tom? Because there's been a flooding of emails that we got today, and Darcy did a yeoman's job trying to chase down things. But you're basically saying all we need, we're just not responsible for naming the owner. I don't know how pivotal that is, but and I don't even know where this person's coming from. Thornton, I think it's the name, wanting to stop that. But John, don't you think that we've had some discussion about this? It's a legal issue.
This is
it's tied up in the land courts.
If I can I talk?
Yeah, you can talk.
I didn't raise my hand yet, and Hearn did. So, Bill, can I jump in for 1 second ahead of you, or you want to go?
Yeah, no, I guess I'm just supporting Larry. I'd like to just make sure our bases are covered. And I mean, Tom knows stuff, and it's like, I don't know.
It's pretty clear to me, Larry, and it's always been, and I think you'd agree that certificates of compliance, like everything else, runs to the property, not to the owner. So when we issue a certificate, it's on file in the registry of deeds, et cetera. It runs to the property. So we don't have to know or care who the owner is. If that subsequently changed, the certificate still applies to whoever the purchaser is or the subsequent purchaser. So I don't have any concerns with approving this and not concerned about the issues that were raised in those many, many, many emails that Darcy forwarded.
I agree with you.
That's where I'm coming from, at least, Larry.
I agree with you. I just wanted it to be something we discussed because if we are not responsible, which I agree, as to who the owner is, especially when they put it into an assumed name, what we're looking at is has the rest of the compliance been complied with? And that's really all we're called upon to do. I agree, John.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I just wanted this because I don't want the people that are involved in litigation to come back and say we acted without authority or we acted beyond an area where we should, because it's an area where we're not obligated to go.
Well, I think we all agree, and I think it's unequivocally clear, just, and I know you know this, that these certificates are orders run to the property, not to the owner.
Yep.
So if the property is sold 10 times, it still runs to all 10 future owners, because it stays with the property. So, Tom, I'm very satisfied with it.
That's fine. I just didn't want to have it be a quick jump without having that discussed.
Okay.
That's why your order of condition is registered to that parcel. And the other things too is that I also check with the town's legal to make sure that I'm on the right path. So
good. So motion was made and seconded, I think. So
roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
We have one set of minutes, August the 2nd, 2022.
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Our next hearing date is September the 6th, and August is going to be gone. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. We are adjourned at 9:02, Mr.